So one of the reasons that we can speak about democracy in the region, other than coming at the point of the barrel of a gun or as a post-colonial transition, is because of the very influential case of Tunisia, which, of course, in December of 2010 into the winter of 2011, provided an example of what the Jasmine Revolution could bring to a region that was very much in need of democratic renewal. We are very honored and fortunate to have with us a former government leader in the audience, who is the former Prime Minister of Tunisia, Dr. Youssef Chahed. This is such a pertinent conversation to his own professional and personal experience that I asked if he would make a brief comment, and he kindly agreed. To introduce him, Dr. Chahed served as Prime Minister from 2016 to 2020. He was both the youngest head of government in Tunisia's history and the longest serving since that country's democratic transition in 2011. As Prime Minister, Youssef Chahed made significant advancements in the fight against terrorism. He launched an anti-corruption campaign, and he navigated severe economic challenges. Prior to becoming Prime Minister, he was Minister of Local Affairs, but also quite critically, he helped to conceive and carry out the presidential campaign that elected Beji Caid Essebsi to the Tunisian presidency. He holds a PhD from Paris Grignon, and he has taught economics in France, and right now he is a senior fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School. We are very grateful for you being here, Mr. Prime Minister. Welcome to Boston College. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jonathan. I'm deeply honored to be here today. Thank you for the warm welcome and for this interesting debate and about democracy. It's maybe it's a good time to talk about democracy. All those Arab barometers, they're really. Except the last one, it's always like this. If you ask people in the Arab street today what's the best form of governance, maybe they're looking more for a strong man to fix the economy rather than a specific type of regime or governance. And after that, but this does not mean that they are better under a dictatorship regime. And maybe it's not only the case in the Arab world. Today, we see the rise of this combination of populism and social networks that create this perception that the people that you are electing in a democratic regime are not serving the interest of the people. And this creates kind of distrust, and this is maybe what happened in Tunisia. But then back to the Tunisian example, which I consider is full of lessons learned for many other Arabic countries, but also for any countries that would like to embark in a democratic regime. First, it is difficult to build a democracy, including a democracy in an Arab Muslim country, because you have to deal with issues like secular state, like political Islam. We remember after the revolution of 2011, we saw the rise of political Islam movement in Tunisia, in Egypt, Muslim Brotherhood, in Jordan, in Yemen, in all the Arab world. The Arab Spring turned to be the rise of political Islam movements. So it was difficult to manage this. It was not expected for us. So those are difficulties that we faced immediately after the revolution. There was also difficulties in relation with the international situation, the rise of terrorism, Daesh, ISIS, all those Al-Qaeda groups that time really make it much more difficult. Tunisia as a democratic experience was attacked many times by these groups because they were not happy to see Tunisia moving to a democratic regime, for sure. So we were attacked, and this impacted the Tunisian economy, the tourism activity. When I arrived to the government, I remember in 2016, there was a travel ban from all European countries to travel to Tunisia, and this impacted our tourism industry and our foreign currency reserve, etc. So those are really planned attacks, and the rise of terrorism impacted the transition. But also, as I mentioned, representative democracies were not in a good condition worldwide, and the rise of populism also And this make it much more difficult in a country where the institutions are not strong, because it's not an old democracy like in other countries, but when the institutions are fragile, so it's much easier to go back to a dictatorship regime. So those are difficulties. But then I think we did a lot of wrong political choices, or economic and political choices. Number one was to rewrite the constitution from scratch. This took like 2.5 years, because you lose momentum. You know, people did a revolution, so they're expecting to have immediate results. And then after 3 years, we had a good constitution, but this is not an achievement. It's not enough for the population. And by the way, the current president used the same constitution that we were happy with, because it was a democratic constitution. He used an article of this constitution to turn it to a dictatorship regime. So a constitution doesn't, it is the way how political actors use this constitution and behave with this constitution. So I think we did some wrong political choices, including in the beginning, immediately after the revolution. As I mentioned, the political system that we choose, we usually, after so many years of dictatorship, we choose the political system that is at the opposite of the centralization of power. So we created a lot of institutions to manage the election, to manage the transitional justice, to manage the media, to manage, and we gave 100% independence to the justice. So the Minister of Justice has no relation with the judge. He cannot appoint them. He cannot remove them. But we ended with a system that we don't know who is governing the country. We dispersed the powers, because the philosophy that we wrote the Constitution with was something like avoiding the concentration of power to avoid the repetition of the dictatorship. But this ends with a system that is a blackmailing system. I give you an example. When I was prime minister, for example, if I have to appoint a minister, I can do that. But then if I want to change this minister, I have to go to the parliament to get approved. So then I am under the political party's approval, and then maybe you have to choose someone who can get the approval from the parliament and not the best skilled person for that job, you know. So we choose a political system that was not really adapted for the country. It required a lot of consensus, and you know, we were not used with that. Especially that the political class that you have after a dictatorship regime is a political class that is not used to run a country. The people that were confronting a dictator are courageous people, but they don't have any vision for the country. They are here to confront and to fight for human rights, etc. But then, when it turns to run a country, it is something different. You need to run a ministry, or you need a vision, you need leadership, you need governance. So the political class, that this is the problem with dictatorship regime, and we see that with Syria. You know, we end up with the Shara, who is the former Al-Qaeda, who is former, you know, fighters, etc. So I don't know what is the Syrian political class, but then, because Bashar al-Assad prevented everyone there was no political life, so you don't find a political class that is able to conduct this transition to democracy. And then we did a lot of political mistake immediately after the revolution. Another failure in Tunisia, and I think this is an important for Syria, it is about transitional justice. We failed in Tunisia in the transitional justice. So all those people that worked with the old regime, how you treat them? They are not all corrupted. Many of them were just instructed by the dictator to do things, but then many of them are skilled. And the people that come after the revolution, they were not skilled to run the country. So, and this will pose a big problem for Syria, because transitional justice is really key. And what about Joulani himself? I don't know if he will be under transitional justice. I mean, so this is an important thing for Tunisia, that we missed that. And for example, the media that were in Tunisia after the revolution were owned by the same people that before the revolution. You know that if you own a media under a dictatorship regime, it means you are working for this dictator. So how can you run media after that? Because there was no transitional justice. This is just an example. And then, as I mentioned, we did strong economic mistakes as hiring people in the public service. We hired thousands of people in the public service to absorb the pressure of the street, and this created a cycle of debt, and we went to the IMF, and we entered in this cycle, increasing salaries, inflation, debt, etc., etc. Because also here another point, maybe at least in the case of Tunisia, it is much more difficult to establish a democracy after a revolution. Maybe it's not the best idea, and I don't know how many democracies were established after a revolution, because the revolution arrived with a certain idea. The young people who did the revolution, I'm not sure that they did it for democracy as per se. Maybe the elites were more, or the elite who was westernized and have strong ties with Europe or with the US, fight it for democracy. But the mass population was looking for more social equity, more or better redistribution of the wealth. And if you look to the Arab Spring, even if there are big differences between Tunisia, Egypt, but there are a lot of similarities. The Arab Spring started with an act of humiliation when Mohammed Bouazizi immolated himself in Tunisia. It is kind of rejection of the regime, the corrupted family of Ben Ali or Mubarak, but those people were looking for a better redistribution of the wealth, because Tunisia and Egypt used to grow at 5-6% at the time. There was a growth, but the distribution of this growth was not good. And there was a lot of divide between the east and the west, between the coastal region and the inner area of the country. So I am not sure that those people that went to the street, they learn or know a lot about democracy with all what does it mean. But they were more looking for maybe freedom and more social equity. And this makes it much more harder, because it put all governments under huge pressure. The revolution was strong social pressure. There was demonstration in the streets immediately, sit-in, they blocked the phosphate production, they blocked the oil and gas production, so the country found itself with less resources. And this understanding of the revolution was also exacerbated by political parties. Because here I came maybe to the third point, which is the behavior of the political parties and actors, globally speaking. I believe that the rise and the fall of a democracy, first thing is the behavior of political actors, political parties, union, prime minister, presidents, security forces. And in the case of Tunisia, we have many positive examples when the political actors behaved positively along this democracy to survive. The army never interfered, for example, in the political game in Tunisia, compared to Egypt, when after 18 months, the army stopped the process. Unions also played a positive role in the beginning in order to balance the political game, but then unions became interfering in the governments and blocking the production, etc. So I think the behavior of political actors is key at the end to decide whether there is a success or a failure in the democracy. So those are maybe quick thoughts. Maybe I will end by saying that democracy is, there's a learning curve, for democracy. It's not something that you publish in the official gazette, and it's not something that came overnight, or you just vote on Sunday morning and then you can say, we consider that we lived under democracy for 10 years. Tunisia was free, fair elections, etc. But then I'm not sure that this is the best example, including for Iraq. I'm not sure that the perception in the Arab street of the democracy in Iraq is positive. Because you need also some quick economic results. You need that people feel and link democracy to their economic and social situation, because you have a lot of forces that are against democracy and that they will play on that now. It's easy to link the bad economic situation with democracy, which is not true. Tunisia, now we are no longer in the democracy and the situation is worse. And no one is demonstrating in the street. But economically, if you look to the numbers and figures, so democracy, there is a learning curve. It needs content to evolve. It needs time. And maybe the hope is that history shows that there are waves of democracy, so maybe the next wave is coming soon for the Arab world. Thank you very much.